Everyone knows someone who's shy. That person who stays quiet in groups, takes hours to reply to a message, avoids parties, prefers to stay invisible. And the most common interpretation? Oh, they're just insecure. Low self-esteem. They need to get out of their comfort zone. But here's the truth, that explains nothing. It doesn't explain why some shy people are extremely confident in certain situations and completely frozen in others. It doesn't explain why shyness has nothing to do with competence. There are brilliant, talented people who achieve incredible things and still shut down in simple social interactions. And it definitely doesn't explain why advice like just be yourself or just relax doesn't work. It never has. Because shyness is not a personality flaw, it's not a lack of courage, and it's not something you fix with a motivational speech. It's something much deeper and much more interesting. The truth is that shy people process the social world in a completely different way, and when you understand how that works, everything changes. The behaviors that once seemed strange start to make sense. The reactions that seemed exaggerated reveal a perfectly coherent internal logic, and most importantly, you realize that shyness was never the real problem. The problem was the way everyone learned to interpret it. Think about someone you know who's shy, the one who stays quiet in meetings, sitting off to the side, but when you talk to them one-on-one, they're articulate, funny, insightful. Or that coworker who completely freezes during presentations but writes brilliant texts. The obvious question is why? If the person has the ability, why can't they access it in certain situations? The answer isn't lack of confidence. It's processing. Shy people have a hypersensitive social alert system. Not because they're weak, but because they pick up on nuances most people ignore. They notice microfacial expressions, subtle shifts in tone of voice, almost imperceptible body language cues. And while most people process conversations on autopilot, talking, responding, interacting without much thought, shy people are constantly analyzing. Was that pause awkward? They looked away. Did I say something wrong? Everyone laughed except that one person. Why? This isn't paranoia. It's hypervigilance. And here's the problem. While you're processing all of this, you're not present in the conversation. You're in your head, analyzing, calculating, predicting consequences. So when it's finally your turn to speak, you've already spent the last 30 seconds simulating 5 different versions of what you might say, anticipating how each one could be received. And while you're doing that, the moment passes. Someone else fills the silence. The conversation moves on. And you're left with the perfect response that never made it out of your mouth. There's another factor no one talks about. Energy cost. For most people, social interaction is natural, almost automatic. But for someone who's shy, every conversation is active work. Every interaction drains energy because it requires full attention, constant analysis, and ongoing self-censorship. That's why shy people feel exhausted after social events. Not because they're antisocial, but because they spent 3 times more energy than anyone else there, and it doesn't stop with direct interactions. This hypersensitive system also kicks in with the possibility of interaction. Sending a text? You reread it 5 times before hitting send. Commenting on a post? You write it, delete it, rewrite it, then give up. Calling someone? You rehearse the conversation in your head, anticipating every direction it could take. This isn't insecurity. It's processing overload. And here's the cruel part. All of this effort is invisible. From the outside, people see someone who doesn't try, who's too quiet, who could participate more. They don't see the internal war. They don't see the cost. They don't see that while they're relaxed in a group conversation, the shy person is operating at the edge of their cognitive capacity just to appear minimally functional, and that leads to something deeply damaging. What this creates is a self-reinforcing vicious cycle. It works like this. You're in a group, you want to join the conversation, but while you're forming what you're going to say, someone else speaks first. You miss the timing, so you stay quiet. And what happens in your head? I should have said something. Why do I always freeze? Everyone here can talk naturally except me. Now there's a new layer. You're not just processing the social interaction. You're processing the failure to participate in it and judging yourself for it. So the next time there's an opening, there's even more pressure. Now I have to say something or they're going to think I'm weird. But pressure increases self-consciousness. And self-consciousness makes you freeze even more, so you stay quiet again. And every time that happens, the internal story gets stronger. I'm bad at socializing. I can't connect with people. Something's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. The problem is you're trying to operate in a system that wasn't designed for the way you process. Because the truth is, social interaction rewards speed over precision. The people who speak first, respond quickly, fill silences, those are the ones who dominate conversations, not because they're smarter or more interesting, but because they act without hesitating. And shy people? They hesitate because they're calibrating, adjusting, making sure what they're about to say makes sense, fits the moment, won't come out weird. By the time they land on a response they feel good about, the conversation has already changed topics 3 times. So there's a brutal choice. Either you say something half-formed and risk looking foolish, or you think it through and lose your chance to speak. Most people choose the second option and pay the price. There's another element that makes everything harder: selective memory. You know that interaction that was totally normal for everyone else, but for you felt embarrassing? That sentence you said that sounded weird in your head? That joke that didn't land the way you hoped? Everyone forgot it in 5 minutes, not you. You replay it for days, weeks, you analyze every detail. You build 1,000 alternate versions of what you should have said, and the next time you see those same people, it's still alive in your mind. You're embarrassed about something nobody else even remembers. That's not overreacting. It's how memory works when you have social hypersensitivity. Negative experiences, or experiences that feel negative, get tagged with way more intensity. Meanwhile, positive experiences barely register because you were so focused on not messing up that you didn't fully absorb the moments that went well, so you end up building a mental file full of social failures. And you use that file as proof that you're bad with people. But there's something no one tells you about this. What no one tells you is that shyness has a side people don't see. And that side, it's a brutal advantage. That hypersensitivity that makes you overanalyze, it also makes you exceptionally good at reading people. You notice when someone is uncomfortable before anyone else does. You pick up on lies, inconsistencies, and hidden intentions. While everyone else stays on the surface of the conversation, you're seeing the deeper layers. That hesitation before speaking, it also makes you careful with words. You don't accidentally hurt people. You don't speak on impulse and regret it later. When you finally speak, it's usually thoughtful, precise, and relevant. And that high energy cost of social interaction, it teaches you how to choose. You don't waste time on shallow connections. You don't tolerate empty conversation just to be polite. You filter. And when you do form bonds, they tend to be deep. The problem isn't shyness. The problem is trying to function in a world that treats extroversion as the default. Meetings that demand instant participation, loud environments where whoever talks the loudest gets heard, casual interactions treated as essential, networking that rewards quantity over quality. None of this was designed around how shy people function best, so you end up feeling inadequate, broken, defective, but you're not broken. The environment is incompatible. There are shy people who are incredible writers, brilliant programmers, deep artists, insightful researchers, exceptional therapists. Why? Because they found contexts where slow, careful processing is valued, where having time to think is an advantage, not a weakness, where depth matters more than speed. And in those environments, shyness stops being an obstacle and becomes a tool. There's another factor that changes everything. Shy people aren't shy in every situation. Put a shy person in a topic they master with people they trust in an environment where they feel safe, and suddenly the hesitation disappears. They speak fluently, they joke, they participate. That proves something important. The issue was never ability, it was context. You don't need to overcome shyness. You need to find environments where it doesn't limit you and build your life around those. But there's a trap here. Social pressure pushes you in the opposite direction. You need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to be more social. You need to put yourself out there. So you force it. You accept invitations you don't want. You go to events that drain you. You try to become someone you're not. And you know what happens? You burn out and you confirm the narrative that something is wrong with you, when in reality the mistake was trying to fit into a mold that was never made for you. Here's what changes everything. Stop treating shyness as a problem that needs to be fixed. Because as long as you see shyness as a flaw, you're at war with yourself, trying to repair something that isn't broken, forcing a version of yourself that isn't natural, and exhausting yourself in the process. The shift happens when you understand this. Shyness is a way of processing the world. Not better, not worse, just different. And like any trait, it works well in some contexts and poorly in others. An extroverted person may shine in chaotic events but struggle with depth in intimate conversations. A shy person may freeze in large groups but form intense connections one-on-one. Neither is wrong, they're simply different configurations. So the real question isn't, how do I stop being shy? It's, how do I build a life that works with the way I am? And that changes everything. You stop accepting every social invitation out of obligation. You choose. You prefer a dinner with 3 people over a party with 30? Great. That's how you recharge, not how you drain yourself. You stop forcing yourself to speak in meetings just to prove you're participating. If you process better in writing, you send an email afterward with your ideas. If you think better alone, you ask for time before responding. You stop comparing yourself to people who are naturally expansive. They have their way, you have yours, and both can work perfectly well. But here's something important. This doesn't mean avoiding everything uncomfortable. It means choosing strategically where you expose yourself. That presentation that terrifies you, but matters for your career, worth the effort. That corporate happy hour that adds nothing, you can skip it without guilt. That difficult conversation you need to have, you prepare, rehearse, and have it. That networking event where you feel completely out of place, there are other ways to build professional connections. This is about intelligence, not avoidance. And there's one more piece that completes the picture. Finding people who understand how you work. Because when you're around those who respect your pace, who don't pressure you to be different, who value depth over social performance, suddenly shyness stops feeling like a burden. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to force comfort. You simply are comfortable. And that's when you realize the problem was never you. It was the people and environments that weren't compatible. So here's the truth. Shy people don't need fixing. They need the right contexts. Environments that value reflection over impulsivity, relationships that prioritize quality over quantity, spaces where thinking before speaking is seen as care, not weakness. And when they find that, they flourish. Not by becoming extroverted, but by fully becoming who they've always been. If you're shy and this video resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Every week we explore how different minds work, without trying to fix anyone, just trying to understand. And you won't want to miss it.